better. And it's really nice to see someone who, you know, has a viewpoint that, you know, the government has like a basic set of responsibilities and maybe doesn't need to be in everything. So I've appreciated your ear on a lot of issues.
I appreciate that, and I was going to share too a moment ago when Kimberly was talking about her philosophy and what some other folks here at the local level believe about it. It is absolutely true. I mean, government at any level, but especially the local level, I believe exists to provide for those basic services that we were talking about a moment ago. And it's hard being in government and trying to limit the size of it, because it just, one, it's a big, huge, massive concern and undertaking in itself. You know, it's kind of the way business is described sometimes, but it's hard to try to go against things that have been in place for so long, and to try to steer the rudder of that big, huge, massive ship that's moving. And that's one challenge that I found down there. But your philosophy, I think, is right on key. I mean, it needs to be on those core essential services that we need to provide at the local level. And yes, we could do a lot of other things with the taxpayers' money, but it needs to be those core things. Let them decide what they want to do. Save them more dollars, and they can invest it or save it, or they can spend it on, yeah, the social activities or the cultural programs and things like that. And there's a lot of worthy programs out there, but I think we're getting off in a you know, kind of a slippery slope direction when we continue to fund a lot of those things with tax dollars.
How do you see local government as in a relationship with the state government and the federal government? I mean, are we partners? Is there a hierarchy? I mean, what is your view of that?
It always seems like federal trumps state and state trumps local sometimes when we have mandates that are handed down sometimes to us that we have to do. I can think of a bill we had in the Finance Committee earlier this week. It had to do with the manatee study, and it's something that the state says each local government has to fund. It wasn't very expensive in comparison to many of the other programs going on, but one, it comes down to whether or not we should be doing it, whether it be in a year like this when dollars are tight, or whether we should do it anyway. And we certainly care about the waterways and the manatees and all of that. But it was, again, essentially handed down from the state that each county will do this, but hey, every county, you find the dollars to do it. So, and we see that in the education system as well. You know, and also as far as working together, sometimes things are handed to you and they say, okay, do this, and then if you try to challenge it, then they could, you know, come after you, I guess, if you don't comply. But it seems that the relationships are good between the different levels. We don't deal with the federal level as much as we do with the state on environmental issues or transportation issues or education. Federal will be more like the grants that come down for either law enforcement or housing or, you know, or things like that, which don't seem to be as frequent. But it you have to work together. I mean, you have to, and it's hard to bucket sometimes.
Are we dealing with a lot of unfunded mandates and with the economy going in the direction that it is? I mean, is there sort of a plan in place to kind of push back against some of these unfunded mandates, or do we just keep taking it? I mean,
well, I mean,
what do we do?
This is the broadest picture example I think to give. I mean, we're in so much debt anyway. I mean, we're all so desensitized to the numbers now because we're in debt with the trillions now, yes. And there's just so much debt. I mean, we drive on bond-financed highways. So many out there, obviously, you know, mortgages and loans, you know, and things like that. I mean, there's just so much debt out there across the board, and even at the local level. I mean, what we pull in from property taxes only funds about half of what we do with, you know, at City Hall through the administration of the local government. The other half is, you know, capital programs and you know, and other things that are financed through debt, and especially the road programs and some, you know, building projects and things like that. So it's really a game sometimes of debt management. How do you manage what we can't afford anyway? So I would argue that it takes cutting back and trying to really live within your means, but that means, you know, putting the brakes on a lot of things that people may want, but that we ought not be doing right now. So it's hard.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll come back to a minute, but while the people are watching, there are a couple of things I thought I might want to add in case there's some young people out there, and it really goes back maybe to your biography and some of the things I may have should have kind of gone over at the opening of the show. But if there are young people out there who have an interest in government, and I'll explore that with Clay in a minute. Clay began his process, I guess, at 19, because that's where I first met Clay Yarborough. he was a cameraman, watching or taping or whatever you're doing with behind the camera of the city council meetings in City Hall. And I remember talking with, because I attended a lot of the city council meetings and I participated as a citizen trying to influence what went on in city council. And at age 19, here was Clay Yarborough observing this process, and within 4 or 5 years, here's Clay Yarborough, the city councilman. What got you involved at such an early age? And then I remember that you were appointed to the Arlington CPAC,
Right.
Community
Citizens
Advisory,
Planning
Citizens
Advisory Committee, right.
Planning Advisory Committee,
Right.
which we know as CPAC.
Right.
And he was appointed by Mayor Delaney to that committee, where those citizens are always active.
Right.
But at that, you were in your early 20s at that time, I would imagine. And it's not often, although I got involved in my early 20s, it's not often that young people are involved. I got involved with, through the Junior Chamber of Commerce at that time, which is now JC's. And what was, seeing what went on there, said at 19 made you decide, I can do better than this?
I had, to be honest with it, and I appreciate the opportunity to share with it a little bit, or share about it rather. I had no interest in politics really when I was in high school, and didn't ever serve in student government or anything. Maybe I'd do a little bit better now if I had, but no. But didn't really have an interest in it. But then had a part-time job at Channel 7, running the TV cameras at the school board and city council meetings, and it just started to grow on me a little bit. And I thought, well, hey, maybe this be something fun to get involved in. First, I wanted to run for the school board, and you know, thought about it a little bit more, and then decided to run for the our local agriculture board, the Soil and Water Conservation Board. And I ran for that in 2000 and served on there for a few years. And then Lake Ray, who's now our state legislator for the Arlington and now part of the Northside District, he was coming up on his term limit for city council in District 1 over in Arlington. So thought about it, prayed about it, and decided it was something that I wanted to do. And it was tough. It was a tough campaign, and you gave the comparison of the years. You said just a few years later that I wouldn't have been able to tell you 3 or 4 years ago, or maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, I would be, you know, then be serving on the city council. I mean, it wasn't something that I could have imagined, and it's still surreal to think about it. Every time to walk into the chambers down there is very, very honoring and humbling. But it's been an education. It's been different, but you know, just wanted to serve and get involved and, you know, do what's best for the people in the district and the city.
How old were you when you were elected to the Soil and Water Conservation?
Soil and Water, 19, and then served 6 years on there.
I'm talking to you young people out there. You know.
So you don't have to wait until you're older to get involved. That's the big point.
Yes,
so,
just remember that
yeah.
Now he was involved in it. How old were you when you were a cameraman?
That was probably the last part of high school, 16, 17,
16, 17, 18.
Right.
And
right.
then by 19, he had made the decision that he could
Right.
serve in an elected official, that he had thoughts and ideas that he thought would be effective, and he thought he could cause things to happen at age 19. And you'll see now that he has been a city councilman for now 4 years.
2.5.
2.5
Right,
gosh, that's 2.5 years. So now he's probably in the 27 or 8 years old.
Yeah,
so, and he's been a city councilman for several terms and been very effective in
Which is still first term, but just a couple of years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because we have term limits, so not several terms. If I could throw one side note, and I know we're limited a little bit on the time, but with Soil and Water, now with City Council, and even through that campaign, which was very hard, and the opposition was strong, I would not have been able to do it without the Lord giving me strength. It took a lot of, the 3 P's in campaigning is patience, prayer, and pavement. Those are the 3 things. But the prayer component and trusting the Lord to lead me, if that had not been there, I wouldn't be doing it. So I definitely don't want to make somebody think, oh yeah, that you don't need that strong foundation of trusting the Lord to help you, because I just don't think you can do a good job if you don't have that. So.
Kimberly, any other follow-up questions you would like to ask Clay about any particular legislation or his philosophy? What brings him about to have this approach to although you are Republican,